Okay, so today I want to talk about the chase lights and what I installed and how I installed it. Somebody had reached out after I had posted the fact that I was working on this as a project as part of some other upgrades too. And I had mentioned that I was actually using a pass-through solution to come through the roof, and they were asking, hey, could you post a video about that? So this video is going to be about how I did this, but first let me walk you through some of the things that I used, and I'll put links to these things down in the description. The first thing you're going to want is the upfitter solution that allows you to wire directly to the auxiliary switches in the Jeep. There are 4 auxiliary switches, and the circuits are actually available to you right here next to the battery, or you can find them in the footwell on the passenger side. But I pretty much just used everything right underneath the hood so that I could wire everything from there. Don't judge me for how dirty things are under the hood. But what I just wanted to show you guys was, for this particular circuit, I used auxiliary 4, which is going to be the blue. I think that's blue and purple is what that wire is. You can see I've pretty much used all 4 of my auxiliary switches now. But yeah, that is actually a solder connection, because the gauge wire that you get for the upfitter harness is a much bigger gauge wire than what is actually put out for auxiliary switch number 4, as you can see. So rather than use some kind of a connector, a butt connector that you can shrink or whatever it is, what I did was I actually soldered, and then I put shrink tubing over that. Then I went ahead and also over the shrink tubing wrapped some electrical tape, and then I put kind of a protective sheath around that as well, just because it's not a high amp circuit, but I don't want this to ever wear against something and end up with a short. So I put that over it to protect it, and then we just set it right down in there like that, so it runs right through the protective sheathing right here. And that's kind of the connection here. And then of course the grounds just go to my ground block here. With that upfitter, that will actually stretch a certain distance. You're also going to need an extension, a 10-foot extension from Baja Designs. It's their 2-pin extension. I think they make it for the S2s and the Squadrons. It's kind of a universal 10-foot extension, 2-pin, 2-connector extension, and that'll allow you to run the whole distance through the Jeep. And again, I came up through, as you guys have seen before, I passed through this area from underneath. We run everything along the frame, and then we pass it up through behind the taillight. This is probably a good point to share with you guys a few things and get you up to date. So you can see I've actually run a circuit for chase lights, and I've run a circuit for the lights in the bumper as well. And then of course I've got the circuit that I'm pulling through for my charger 1 right here. And all of this clearly needs to be connected, and for right now I've got enough slack up here to where I'm just kind of pulling everything through and routing the wiring. So you can see I'm going to have some things down here that are going to be bundled up nice and tight under here with some zip ties and some mounts, and that'll be shielded as well. So we'll actually put some protective shielding around that to protect it from any heat in the engine bay as well. Now that runs underneath the Jeep, it'll run along the frame under here up above, and there are other wiring harness pieces that are already attached that are stock up there, and so we'll literally be zip tying and tying all that stuff together, and that will run all the way along back up through here with all these other harnesses that you see that were stock harnesses and things, and connect right back up here, which is going to be back underneath behind the inner fender liner right here. Now, one of the circuits that I did run, and you can see there's just a bare wire here right now that's going to be connected to the chase lights. That's running up through the frame here, and then up through inside, and you'll see that in the video. And then the other thing you're going to need is an actual, I think it's called the S2 wire harness or splitter. Again, I'll put a link to it below, and I'll put something up here so you guys can see what it is. But now let's walk through actually running the pass-through here. And then as you can see, well, maybe you can't see, it's kind of dark under here because everything's black, but you can see my Y or splitter, and then everything is kind of zip tied up underneath the rooftop tent. The reason I did that is because if I pull the rooftop tent off and put the Rhino Rack platform back on, Pioneer platform back on, I can easily switch those lights for the chase lights from mounted right to the tent to the Pioneer platform really easily with just one bolt on each one. Very simple to do. So that allows me to keep everything installed and just remove the lights from the tent, swap it over, and so forth. But yeah, let's take a look at how we did this.
So if you have the Jeep JLU, you probably also have the interior pieces that just Velcro right into the inside of the top. These can be easily removed for running the wiring behind them to keep things clean. Here I'm removing the side piece as well as the piece that goes over the top of the back door. I'm also going to go ahead and remove the piece on the roof because I'll be drilling through here to run the wiring through for the pass-through.
So what you can see here is the Velcro on the top of the headliner here that goes up and where it Velcros to the hardtop. And what we'll be doing is we'll be picking a location where we want our wires to pop through under here, and then we'll route them back to the corner, right back down behind the Velcro interior right over here. And we'll walk it right down out through the hole on the bottom. So it's pretty straightforward. The key here is I have a rooftop tent on the top, so I'll be working underneath that. And if I have to, I guess I'll go ahead and unbolt the rooftop tent and lift it up enough to give myself some room. Let me show you where I'm gonna mount this. Now, when you look at the top of your roof, you'll notice that there's kind of ridges up here and troughs across the top, you know, for wind. And from my thinking is that I want to mount that on top of one of the ridges because water would puddle or tend to go down into the lower areas, and you want this at a high point. Now it's going to be sealed with a rubber grommet, but there's no reason why I'd want to mount it down low, and rather I'll mount it up like this on top of a ridge. You know, any chance of water puddling around it is very low. But the other thing too is when I come through here, because I'm on a ridge above, that gives me a gap in between to actually route the wire between the headliner and the actual roof itself, so that I don't have anything bulging, you know, the headliner, pushing down the headliner, and the headliner can Velcro right back up there, just like it was before. So what you can see here is I've gone ahead and I've drawn the 4 pilot holes to be able to put these in. I drilled one first, went ahead and put the screw in, lined this up exactly where I want it, and then just used the holes to align for my 4 pilot holes. And I'm using a 90-degree drill bit. Let me show you what that is. All right, if you don't already have one of these, which is a 90-degree drill bit, they come in really handy. I used them a lot when I was building cars, and it allows you to attach a drill from your drill into a bit here. You can actually just go ahead and attach any size drill bit right in here. Easier said than done with one hand. There we go. And that allows you to go ahead and drill in some tight spaces. But 90-degree drill bit, if you don't have one, get one. They're not expensive. You can attach it right to any drill, and that allows you to get into those tight spots. All right, so now you can actually see exactly where all 4 of those are coming through. What I'll do now is I'll go ahead and I'll remove that device from the roof, and I'll bring the small rubber gasket underneath, and I'll use that to mark the hole that I want to drill for the large hole. All right, so now as you can see, we actually have the pass-through mounted securely. That's actually screwed down quite nicely with the rubber grommet that goes all the way around underneath to seal it from water intrusion. We've got our wire pulled through. As you can see, I think you might be able to see that a little better from this side, maybe, not sure. You can see that's pulled through from underneath, from the inside. And I've left myself plenty of room here to work with because we're going to cut this, and we're going to be manipulating this a little bit and moving it around. I will say one of the things I did do was I went and got some slightly shorter screws because I didn't want these sticking through so far that they would poke through the headliner. So you can see here, those are just barely poking through, maybe just slightly less than 1/4 of an inch or so, versus the stock screws that came with it, which actually poke through pretty far. Now, one of the things that the instructions call for is they give you these tubes that are meant to actually cut a hole, drill a hole through your rubber grommet that you're going to pass the wire through. One thing I will say is you end up using a bigger one than you think you need, because when you actually drill through the rubber kind of pushes out and expands, and then when you pull the bit out, it collapses again and the hole is much smaller. So I went with the size that matched the wiring almost perfectly, but then when I pulled it out, the hole was too small. So I ended up having to drill it out with a regular drill bit, which took me a little bit of time where I was just honing the rubber hole out. Not ideal, but now we've got a nice tight fit around the wire. All right, so now what we have is we actually have the rubber grommet on the wire, as you can see here, and that's going to get pushed into the hole of the actual housing. Once that's pushed in, the outside shell comes in and goes over the top of that and squeezes the grommet into the hole. All right, so I know it's probably a little dark under there right now because it's under the rooftop tent, but now you can kind of see the finished product with the screw holding the cap on, and the cap, of course, is what's squeezing the O-ring inside here around the wire itself. The wire comes out to a Y that I have zip tied up underneath the tent. And so as you can see, there's no visible wire. The wire is actually tucked underneath this headliner here and routed down through the actual pillar of the back here. Now, what I've done here is I've left myself a little loop, and let me explain why. Eventually, I'm going to put a connector here as well. And the reason for that is that if I ever want to be able to remove the top and still drive, you know, and not have, you know, just a cut wire here or something like that, I'll actually put a plug here that will get fastened to a position. And that will allow me, just like the other side here, where you have your plugs that you can disconnect for different reasons. You know, this is your windshield washer fluid and things like that. I'll be able to actually disconnect this wire as well and take the top off and not have to worry about the chase lights. So I don't think I'll have to be tail gunner anymore. I think these chase lights are gonna work pretty good. So if you find yourself out there in super dusty conditions with a group of people, I think this is a pretty good setup. Again, these are the S2 Sports, and they require less current, much less current than what that auxiliary switch 4 is capable of putting out. And I think those are gonna work pretty good. In fact, every time I look over there, I feel like I'm blinding myself. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments. I'll be happy to answer. Take care.